Okay, as you will have guessed from the opening credits, Dan is in New York. He's having a family holiday, which is when all your guitar money gets spent on things like ice creams and Disneyland. He is going to Disney something or other in Florida. Anyway, so I'm on with Todd today, and we've got Dan to beam in a couple of answers to today's questions, as you will see. Right, God, this is weird, isn't it? So today's episode is all about the Friday show, which was tape echoes. We had the RE201 and the Echo Fix from Australia alongside some of our favourite pedals. So let's kick off. Right, D-Mac. How much was Dan loving this? Looks like a kid who just scored a free polywaffle and a bag of twisties. I don't know if that's Australian or American or something else, but anyway, someone will understand. And similarly, Jeremy Ford, Rob Barstow, Cheddar, Kung Pao, hi Dave, Chris Cassidy, Albus Band, Patrick Ellington, all had lots to say about Dan's awesome playing. He definitely gets in a little mode there when he's on the delays. He loves it. It's just his thing, and he did play it exceptionally well. So well done, Dan. Hope you're enjoying New York, mate. Now What and Eric Janusz say, please, 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 please make a Twidge authentic t-shirt. We might do that, actually. We might do that. I was talking about twidging knobs, and Dan said Twidge authentic. We all fell about laughing, and that was that. Death Nightblood and Steve say What No Watkins. Mike Young, Sean Hartley, In Lost Emotion, and lots of others would have liked to have seen the Strymon Volante. And obviously lots of people asked why there was no RE20 and various other things that we didn't include. The simple answer to all of that is we don't own them. If we'd owned them, they'd be in there. On the Volante, well, first things first, other tape echoes of the period and indeed of the late 50s, we should do that. We should source some of those and try it. Watkins, Wems, I mean, getting into the 60s and 70s. But also before that, what happened before that. Anyway, that would be a fantastic show if we could ever source that stuff. As for more modern stuff, why no RE20 or Volante? Bizarrely, given how much Dan and I really like the Volante, neither of us actually bought one. Not quite sure why that is, because it is an exceptionally good unit. If you haven't seen the Volante, Strymon Volante, it's half of it is kind of Binson Eckerrecke and half of it is kind of tapey. It sort of centres on the Eckerrecke type thing, but it does a lot of good tape stuff as well. So maybe there's a show there too in the future. We both did like it. RE20 from Boss. Again, we don't own one of those, and that is the sort of dual pedal format of the 201. I'm secretly hoping they'll bring out like maybe a Wazza version of that. Maybe, we'll see. I don't know that they are, by the way. That's pure speculation. I doubt they would. Pepe Le Pew, Tim McPherson. What buffer are you guys using to drive the Space Echo? We referenced the buffer. I don't see any kind listed in your info. Okay, Dan, over to you, mate.
Hey guys, Dan here. I am on holiday in New York with my family. No, I didn't go and see John Mayer at the Garden, but yes, having the best time. Okay, so what buffer are we using? The output of the pedals that we're using before the tape machines are acting as buffers. Okay, so if we're using an overdrive or using a compressor or whatever, the output from that is low impedance enough to drive the input of the tape machines. And if we weren't using anything, then I'd just use the buffer, the pre-buffer in G2, just to give it a nice low impedance signal. But generally, if we have a pedal on before the tape machines, then that is acting as the buffer as well.
SR, I zoned out for a bit, but were the delays in the front of the amp or in the loop? We always use high headroom, cleanish amps. I think we were using maybe these, the Matchless and the 2-Rock. And if we weren't, we were using the Matchless and the 50 watt Plexi, but the 50 watt Plexi would have been set to high headroom clean. It wasn't into overdriving at all. Certainly for all analog effects, we tend to prefer it that way. Neither of us are big fans of effects loops because of all the other compromises they bring to the game. However, if you do use gain in the front end of your amp, if you use a crank Marshall or, I don't know, something like the Victory Sheriff back there, then yeah, running delays and stuff into the front is going to be untidy, although still a very cool sound used in plenty of genres of music. But the accepted method there is run them in the loop. Now, people seem to get really confused about this, but it's really simple. Just always try and put your delays after your gain. And that doesn't matter whether your gain is coming from a pedal or whether it's coming from the front end of your amp. Try and get the delay after the gain for a sort of traditional setup. Plenty of people like delays in front of gain as well, but that's a different thing. So yeah, we always run them into the front of the amps. Not massive fans of loops around these parts. Jukka Fail. Jukka Fail. As much as I've enjoyed the recent set of focused topic episodes, interviews, insane vintage guitars, devices that don't actually fit on a pedal board, etc., there is something to be said for an episode where you guys just play with a few pedals. A few people have said this, actually. Stop going to all the silly guitar shops and just sit in the room and play pedals. Okay. Will there be more Pick and Mix episodes in future? Yes, there will. Pick and Mix. In fact, tomorrow, Pick and Mix returns tomorrow, and Dan and I have tried something different. We've actually tried to incorporate some backing tracks. So for part of the show, we talk about the pedals themselves, exactly what you're talking about, Jukka Fail. And then for the remainder of the show, we actually just run a backing track and jam over it and see what happens, just to get an idea of the pedals in context. We think it's worked quite well. We'll just please let us know what you think, and if you like it, we'll do more of it. Chris Stanbridge, Tom German were asking about bucket brigade devices, what that means in terms of design and sound. Well, here's what Wikipedia says. A bucket brigade or bucket brigade device, a BBD, is a discrete time analog delay line developed in 1969 all the way back then by F. Sangster and K. Tier of the Philips Research Labs. It consists of a series of capacitance sections, C0 to C11. Yeah, my eye's not so good at this distance. The stored analog signal is moved along the line of capacitors, one step at each clock cycle. The name comes from an analogy with the term bucket brigade used for a line of people passing buckets of water. And just to add to that, if you imagine you've got people with 5 buckets, one lot of water comes in one end, you take your signal, which is the water, you pour it into the first bucket passes it to the second bucket, by the time you get to the end of that line, you've lost quite a lot of water. And that is the analogy they use for the way that works in the delay. So hence, getting a bucket brigade delay to sound really nice and hi-fi is really difficult, because you start getting real mess in the high end as the signal goes along. But it's a really super classic sound, and it is the sound of many of those analog delay pedals. Edward Bartley. My DD7 and RV6, they are both Boss devices, are after my distortion. I can have them set to sound great clean, but when I kick into my distortion, it really overdrives the delay and the reverb pedals too. I have to turn the reverb pedals and the delay pedals back when I use the distortion. My Supro Trem works great no matter what I hit it with. Would analog reverb and delay work better? Possibly. Right. What your delay pedal is doing, when you hit it with a signal, it's repeating what you've given it. So if you give it more signal, it repeats more signal. I'm consistently surprised how many people struggle to get their heads around this. More in, more out. So of course, you're playing your, what have you got? DD7, so modern digital delay. I don't know what setting you use it on, but let's say for argument's sake you use it on the kind of modern digital clean setting. You hit it with a nice clean sound, it delays that clean sound. Step on a distortion pedal, might be a bit louder, but it's certainly going to be gnarlier, it's going to have some more unpleasant harmonics in there. And depending on what delay time you have set, of course, it's just going to delay what you give it in the first place, so it's going to sound messier, slightly more unpleasant. Same with reverbs. But with delays it's more noticeable because it is actually delaying the exact thing you play, right? Analog delay, and we kind of demonstrated this using the carbon copy if you want to flip to that section. Because of that high-end roll-off that we just talked about, me and Mini Dan here, in the Bucket Brigade devices, all of that nasty, kind of mushy, horrible extra stuff gets filtered off, and what you're left with is a kind of a duller delay that sits underneath everything. So yeah, that will happen, and that equally happens in effects loops as well, where let's say you've got your delay in the effects loop, you hit it with your clean channel, and it's one thing and you like it, then you switch to your dirty channel, which is louder and growlier and all of those things, and all of a sudden your delay goes nuts because you're hitting it harder. And as you say, you have to turn the effect level down to get around that. So yeah, will an analog delay help? Maybe. But in that question lies the key to everything we're talking about, which I think we come on to in a minute. Yes, James M. Interesting how the carbon copy analog delay repeats sounded dark, dull, and sort of artificial on clean tones, especially right after hearing the tape. Then you went to an overdriven lead tone, and the carbon copy sounded awesome. Is there more to explore and understand from that? Well, yeah, that ties in exactly to what we were just talking about, me and Minnie Dan here. Neither is better or worse. It's just understanding where they are more applicable, and hence why you might see at least 2, sometimes 3, 4 delays on a lot of people's pedal boards, because some things work with different sounds. You know, the idea that a single sound delay pedal is going to work all the way across all your gain stages is hoping for a lot, really. Ironically, the one that probably would is sat back there. I don't know. Anyway, understand they do different things, and maybe have 2 contrasting delays on your pedal board that you can use for different sounds. I hope that explains that. Dan, I hope you're nodding in New York, although you're probably in Miami by now. Steve Kirby, Chris Blythe, and Calviopus warn us against clipping the input stage of the tape delays. As you will have noticed, the the VU meter on the front was in the red quite consistently, with plenty of signal. I can see the meters pegging and hear the occasional clipping. Of course, like the old Echo Plex, overdriving the preamp could be part of what you're after. Before we get more answers on this, Dan is going to answer. I will just say that the experience of clipping in a digital world and the experience of going over the red line, as it were, in an analog world are 2 totally different things. Clipping does not sound the same. In an analog world, you get overdrive, nice harmonics and all the rest of it. In a digital world, you get horrible, filthy clipping, which nobody wants. It's a disgusting thing. Well, some people use it to great effect, but if we're talking about a clean signal. So, first of all, before we bring Dan back, sound gas say, well, echo that really. Echo that, really. Echo that really. Tape rewards being hit hard with extra signal. You get more compression and saturation, and it sounds great. And Dan says,
okay, so why are the VU meters slamming on the tape devices? I think a lot of people, when they see especially with digital stuff, you can't go anywhere near the edge of digital stuff, otherwise you get digital clipping, and that's horrible. But with these old analog tape machines, it's no problem to hit them really hard. And especially with that stuff, you need to use your ears more than anything. And I find with the 201 and with the FX2, which is a very similar preamp, that actually, even though the meters do read that you're hitting quite hard, there's still a lot of clean headroom left at the end of that VU meter travel. So, with those, don't forget as well that if you do overdrive it, you're going to overdrive this preamp, and actually it sounds great. And if you're pushing more signal onto tape, again, that has a sound all of its own and can sound fantastic.
okay, Scott McCormick and Tiadiad say, how long do the tapes last in something like the RE201 or the Echo Fix? The guys at Soundgas were kind enough to reply and say, high quality tapes like ones from Echo Fix last a very long time. Depends how much fidelity you want, and of course how much you use the unit. But we use ours for months. Months. Sounds like a long time. Ian M. Oi, 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 Mick. What was the song from around 17 minutes mark? You pulled out that lick back in the old place on the Sunburst PRS. Anyway, I've been chasing it for ages. What is it? It's something that... you know how Eric Johnson does that kind of... that kind of thing, but he does it wider string spacing and much better. As I was working that sort of thing out, it was E minor, D, C, D. One, 5, 3. Is that right? Minor 3, yeah. 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, minor 3, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 3. So just picking out, arpeggiating those E minor, D minor, C minor. As far as I'm aware, it's not a song, although who knows what goes in when you listen to all this music for all these years. Andrew Morgan, Bonza audio on this one. Seriously, soul-melting stuff. I could barely hear any noise when you tried to demonstrate the noise of the tape units. Did you accidentally fix it in the mix, or was that my gear? Andrew's been listening on some really nice headphones and getting some good DA conversion going on. Yes, we did fix it in the mix, actually, because on the voice track only, here above my head, right here, is a Sennheiser, what are they called? MKH416 shotgun microphone, which is what Dan and I use to capture our voices. Fraser, our new assistant, who's now doing the majority of the audio, Fraser has introduced us to some software called iZotope RX7, which is an absolutely brilliant noise reduction software, and we use that on the voice mics only. So it might be that he left it up when we were talking about noise. Now, if he'd been awake, he would have turned it off for that bit, but I can't be sure that that's what happened. But yeah, we are using iZotope RX7 on the voice mics only for here. We don't use any noise reduction on the guitar amp mics, just for the record. James Travis. Okay, this is a more general question. Hi, James. First time commenter for VCQ. Welcome and thanks for commenting and questioning. You're always talking about how you need to play a guitar before you buy it and see what feels good, what speaks to you, etc. And this was definitely evident in the amazing ATB episode. As a lefty, sad face, unfortunately this just isn't possible. If I'm lucky enough to go into a guitar shop and find 3 guitars that I can play, that is extremely unusual. I've no idea what would actually class as a great guitar. I'm turning 30 and looking to treat myself with a new guitar, probably a Strat. The likelihood is I'll just have to order something blind. So do you have any advice? I'm worried about splashing out a reasonable sum on the guitar, then really loving it for whatever, not really loving it, and having it to explain it to the wife. I'm looking at 50s or 60s Strats, but no one has them in stock when you're a lefty. That is a real problem. That is a real massive problem. And I don't know the answer. In the UK, there used to be a specific retailer that was geared at or aimed specifically towards left-handed guitar players. Because you're right, the manufacturers, they having worked in guitar magazines for very many years and been asked this question many times, what the manufacturers will tell you is that the demand just isn't there, and less than 10% of guitar players are left-handed. Lots of lefties and lots of people I know absolutely refute that and say that's garbage. However, if it was economic for the guitar manufacturers to produce more left-handed guitars, they'd be doing it, I think. It's a really, really difficult one. And then even worse, how on earth do you know if you buy a guitar blind, you're going to like it? I think you might have to get in a car or get on a plane. Depending, I don't know where you live. If you live in the UK, this is relatively easy and kind of not dreadfully expensive to just, you know, chuck a weekend at it and go to some guitar shops and play some guitars. That's option 1. In the States, I guess it's more difficult because you've got vast distances to cover. But I think that would be a good place to start. After that, I think you probably will just have to buy a couple of things. Now, the good news is modern retailing have very good returns policies. So depending on how much space you've got on your credit card, you could just order 3 or 4 guitars and send 3 of them back. And I know people who do that for the very reason you're talking. Even things like private stock PRSs, they'll buy 2 or 3, play the one they like, send the other 2 back. So that is possible. That is possible. But I feel your pain. I really do feel your pain, having heard for so many years what a pain in the butt it is for lefty guitar players. Even if you commission something custom, even if you spend loads of money, you still don't know if you're going to love that guitar. So yeah, I do feel your pain. I feel your pain. The good news, more good news is modern production electric guitars, the level of consistency is much higher than it was years ago. So if you go for Strat, for example, it's going to be, sure, they're all going to be slightly different from one to one, and I might prefer one and you might prefer the other one, but they're all going to be of high quality and, you know, play well and not have any serious defects. Same with PRS. I don't know, any other decent modern large volume guitar manufacturer you can think of. Yeah, good luck with that. Let us know how you get on. I'm interested in that. Okay, couple more. Jesse Hicks, Mick, please help settle a debate I'm having with myself. Vintage pickup configuration or RWRP? Oh, okay. For anyone who doesn't know, on a Strat, these two pickups are the same in terms of their wind direction and polarity, magnetic polarity, and this one is reverse wound, reverse polarity. And what that means is when you go to position 2 or position 4, you lose any hum, right? Because the hum cancels out like a humbucker. However, the train of thought is that because of the reverse polarity, primarily, I think, the magnetic pull on the strings is different. And it's certainly said, an example of which would be the Johnny Marr Jaguar. So when Johnny was designing that guitar, he worked with a guy named Bill Puplett, who's Johnny's guitar tech and guitar tech to lots of other famous people, and also Tim Mills at Bare Knuckle Pickups. And they kind of decided that having the two pickups RWRP was exerting some force on the strings that wasn't as sweet sounding as having them the same. So you lose the noise reduction, but you gain a better harmonic content in the guitar, is what they say, right? I don't know. I've always had RWRP just because I didn't understand that before I bought these pickups. So I don't know. This guitar sounds great. Don't know what my new ones are. I've got 3 sets of new pickups that are going to go in that guitar. I don't know what they are. I imagine the custom shop ones are RWRP. Be interested to know what Ron Ellis says about it, what Mark Foley says about it, what their view on it is. I would imagine the strict vintage guys don't want to do RWRP. That is an interesting topic. Kevin Klein, hey guys, apologies for posting off topic, but I'm curious if you guys have considered a show focusing on vacuum tubes, NOS versus current production, etc. I think it would have its own challenges and might be a cumbersome task, but given your production values, there is something to be gleaned. I was doing some work with Martin Kidd from Victory Amps this week. We were talking about valves. His view and that of lots of amp people I talk to say that you can't possibly go NOS, new, what's better, what's worse. As you may be aware, there are now essentially 2 manufacturing facilities in the world making valves. In the old days there were more, but it's all about selection. It's all about you know, taking this pair of valves and making sure they're similar enough to be matched as a pair. Some people don't like that. They prefer them to be mismatched. So I don't know about NOS, because NOS means new old stock, doesn't necessarily mean good. It might be new old crap. They might not have been good in the first place. So I think if we were going to do that, we'd have to talk to somebody who really knows. Dan and I don't know enough about valves to get into that, really. I've never worried about it that much. I've just replaced the valves in my amp when I feel like they need replacing, which isn't very often. That said, my 2-Rock Classic Reverb Signature is on Matt Schofield's new upcoming album. He used that amp to record most of the record. And the first thing they did when they got there is they changed them all out for old Mallards and some other stuff, and they liked it. So maybe it's an interesting debate, and then see if we could hear anything. I doubt we could hear much using our recording techniques. In the room, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Lots of people will disagree with that, but I've never gone into that rabbit hole far enough to understand it well enough. So maybe. Okay, that's it. Thanks for putting up with just me this week, and mini silent Dan, and also mini non-silent Dan in New York. Tomorrow is the new format pick and mix. Friday, I believe, is Dan's pedalboard. Finally. Thanks also to everyone who bought a TPS limited edition Jam Pedals Rattler this week, and sorry to everyone who missed out. A few people were very upset because they missed out and it only went to patrons. We might do it differently next time. We probably will do it differently next time. But anyway, thanks to everyone who bought one, and we hope you really love them.
Cheers, guys. Have a great day and hope to see you soon. Bye.
See you tomorrow. See you Friday. See you next Monday.